So we do have an amazing speaker to start with. It's Dr. Sally Shaw. Sally is a psychologist who holds a particular focus on the provision of information, education and support to people with multiple sclerosis and the health professionals that work with them. Having worked within both clinical and health promotion settings, Sally's doctoral thesis examined the need of people newly diagnosed to take control while attempting to adapt to a diagnosis of multiple sclerosis. In 2007, Sally joined the team at Eastern Health MS Service in Melbourne and works as a consultant psychologist as well as in private practice. Based firmly within a positive psychology framework, Sally works with clients to increase their ability to be strategic while moving forward in life. So welcome, Sally, and we look forward to your amazing talk.
Good morning. It's hard when somebody says we look forward to your amazing speech, so there's zero pressure, obviously. I am going to pretend today that you have all come to hear from me and from my colleague, Ingrid, instead of just here for the free food, which I'm sure will be delicious. I'm thrilled to be here. I'm thrilled to be here to talk about a little bit about research, which is of course what we're celebrating today with World MS Day, but also I'm really excited always about practical strategies and ways we can make our lives better. And at this point, I would like to say that unfortunately, for those of you who are in the room that don't have MS, I will be speaking to you as well. So if you are sitting next to somebody who you love and adore who has MS and you are thinking, yes, I hope my partner here takes good, notes in this session and does something to improve their happiness in life and to be strategic, please know that I'm talking to you as well, because we can all benefit from a lot of the strategies that I'm going to be discussing today. So I hope that everybody can take something away. So a quick overview of what I'm going to cover in this morning's session. I do want to give you a little bit of personal information about myself and the search for a thesis topic. A little bit about the MSIF, or the Multiple Sclerosis International Federation Quality of Life Principles. It's a mouthful. I also want to talk about a change that's happening in psychology and a changing psychological approach of working with clients with MS, but also without. And the practical approach, the practical strategies I want to bring today include these dot points. You can see that I can talk really quickly and I will be talking really fast to get through these. Stress Management 101 can make an enormous difference in all of our lives. Mindfulness. Put your hand up if you already know about mindfulness or do a little bit. Oh, look. Okay, I'm preaching to the converted. That's good. You can educate the others on your table that may not already know about this, and I won't spend too long there if you feel like you're already doing it. That's wonderful. Active relaxation. Another show of hands. Sometime, yeah, okay, we'll talk about it. Gratitude and kindness. These are all good things. And communication and coping strategies. And just to wake you up at the very end of the session this afternoon, I've got a very short little video that I find really funny, which is also not the way to introduce something, but I hope that you find it funny too. So as you know, I'm a psychologist, focus really just on working with people with MS. I also work sometimes with significant others, carers or people that are living in a relationship that has MS in it, but it just doesn't happen to be in their body. They're good people to work with as well. And I work in a public hospital setting in an MS service, but also in private practice. And now through the NDIS, I also work on FaceTime, which is really weird for me, but much better than telephone counselling because you can see someone. So the NDIS is the first avenue in Australia where you can have some funding for telephone counselling or FaceTime counselling. Under Medicare, you can't. You have to be sitting in the office of the person that you're seeing. So that's really exciting and a new area that I'm trying to grapple with the technology, but it's working. So my search for a thesis topic. My background is in science and I did a postgraduate in psychology, postgraduate diploma. And then I decided to do a doctorate of health psychology and my parents thought she will never get a job. But I decided to do it anyway and I went to university and spent a lot of time drinking coffee because that's what you do when you're doing a doctorate and trying to figure out what am I going to study. I was always interested in the correlation between psychological health and physical health and how the two interplay. But I didn't know what to put my energy into for my thesis topic. So I was having coffee one day, as you do, and I went to the bathroom. Now, I know we have just met each other, so forgive me because I know this is too much information, but I'm hoping that by the end of today you'll know me well enough to say, we forgive her. I was having coffee, I went to the bathroom, and I noticed that half of the toilet seat was warm. Now, sometimes you go to a public toilet and the toilet seat's warm and you think, well, we just know that somebody's been there recently, but only half of this seat was warm. And I thought that was very odd, but didn't think much about it, went back to my latte. Went home later and went to the toilet again down the track, and only half of my toilet seat was warm. And then I started to think, oh, maybe it's my leg and not the toilet seat. So I thought, maybe I've had a little spider bite. But then the effects of that spider bite started travelling down my left leg. And it was a feeling of dullness. It wasn't really numb. It certainly wasn't painful. It just felt a bit weird. And it was spreading to my foot, and I thought, well, that's a strange spider bite, but I was only a couple of months away from getting married, and I was at uni having a lot of lattes, and I was very busy. So I didn't think much of it. But when this strange sensation started to spread up my torso and had quite a distinct line down the midpoint, I thought, maybe I should go to the doctor. You all know where I'm headed, and I'm not going to bore you with the entire story because clearly you're here to talk about research and not about my experience of an MS diagnosis. But I went to the GP and felt like a great hypochondriac when he pricked me with several pins, and I thought, well, I can feel it, but just not that well. And went off to the neurologist, and he said, well, why don't we do some blood tests, and here's a slip to go and have an MRI. And I thought, well, you know, is it viral? Do you think it might be viral? And he said, well, the blood test will rule that out. And I said, well, for some reason I didn't want to say, what is it? You know, what do you think it is? Because, of course, we'd never question them. They'll tell us when they're ready. So I didn't ask. And I said, are these symptoms quite common? And he said, well, often in young women. Oh, really? Is that right? I said, you know. Now, this is 2001. So just to age myself and probably most of us in the room, this was before Google. Can you remember a time before Google? My children don't understand. So I took the MRI slip. Well, he said to me, here's the slip, go have the MRI and then just give me a call for the results. I said, are you going to tell me the results over the phone? And he said, yeah, unless it's something serious. And then I'll get you to come in. I was like, oh, okay. On the MRI slip, it says, question mark, first, demyelination. And I thought, I know, I've done science degree. So I get my big, thick biology textbook. If anybody has been there, it was called Life. It was very big in the 90s. Opened it up to the index or the contents at the back. Demyelination. 2 sentences. Demyelination occurs in multiple sclerosis. Multiple sclerosis is a degenerative disease leading to blindness, paralysis and cognitive dysfunction. Full stop. Nothing else. No Google. That was all I got. And I said to my soon-to-be husband, John, oh my gosh, I think I've got MS. And he said, can you stop looking in your textbooks? You're not a neurologist, you don't have MS. And I said to my friends, I think I've got MS. And they said, Sally, people with MS have walking sticks. You don't have a walking stick. Okay, yeah. So I called the neurologist. Hello, it's Sally calling for my results. He says, Sally, they've just landed on my desk. Let me have a look. Blood tests are fine. You could hear the big MRIs in those days, shuffle, shuffle, up on the light box, you know, I was picturing. And then I could hear that one came down and he's putting another one up and he's putting another one up. I'm just going to put you back to my receptionist. Why don't you come in tomorrow and have a chat? Oh, no. So in I went, diagnosed with MS. So many stories. I won't go there. And I decided I'm going to be that person. I'm going to take this thing that I know nothing about. I know the MS Society logo. I know the MS readathon that I never did. And I know that everybody with MS ends up in a wheelchair. That was the totality of my information. I thought I need to learn more about this. And I'm studying a doctorate in health psychology. Maybe I can become that person that studies what they're going through. So I became that person. My thesis, trying to take control while attempting to adapt, colon, very important. If you ever want to do a thesis, have a colon in there. Perspectives of people with MS, at least in psychology, on the 12 months following a diagnosis. 110,000 words. The conclusion was, everybody's different. That was pretty much the conclusion. What do people do in the first 12 months? Well, lots of lifestyle modifiable factors. They exercise more. They exercise less. They'd change their diet and maybe follow a vegan diet. They'd drink much more red wine. You know, you're somewhere in there, somewhere on that spectrum. You tell everybody you've ever met. You tell no one. Why would I ever tell anybody? You can imagine which one I was, you know, telling everyone. It was a really good way for me to examine MS from many perspectives, and I was so passionate about it, which is what I needed because I'm really good at procrastinating, and I was so passionate about this topic I was interested. And it carries through to my work. I'm always interested. Now, before I talk about what I'm really meant to talk about, which is the research, the mistake that Andrew had today was to give me this control and to tell me to create my own slides. So I thought I'd show you photos of my children. Because nobody's going to, I challenge them, they're not going to come and tell me not to. So this is Hamish. Hamish is 9. He's a lot like me. They play chair lotto in grade 4, which is when they put their hand into the bag to pull out who they're going to sit next to for the next 4 weeks. Great way to mix it up, make new friends. He was going to sleep one night, you know, I'm just tucking him in, and that's when you get the little gems. If you have children, you know what I mean. They just come out with the little bits of information. Hamish says last week, we played chair lotto today, Mummy. I said, oh, who are you sitting next to? He said, well, there are people on my table, but I'm not allowed to sit next to anyone right next to me. I said, oh, why is that? He said, sometimes I don't make very good decisions about talking. And all I could do was say, look, I'm right there with you, buddy, so I understand and it'll work out. Good, keep practicing. This is my daughter, Eloise. Eloise is 7. She's her own little entity. You know how sometimes, you know, children, you know, Hamish and I are just so similar. I just get him, he gets me. We just, you know. Eloise is mysterious. She's a mysterious baby. She's a lot like my husband. He's a mystery as well. And when she was born, a friend of mine said to John, my husband, she's got these amazing eyelashes. They're just amazing. And a friend of mine said to John, I get lost in Eloise's eyelashes. What hope will teenage boys have? John doesn't like talking to me or about his daughter. Eloise came into the bathroom yesterday and she said, she was brushing her hair like this, you know, 7-year-old, very important. And she says, Mummy, Barbie, I didn't know she knew much about Barbie. Barbie says to brush her hair 1,000 times a day to keep it silky smooth. I said, oh. She goes, I don't have time for that. I thought, phew, that's good. Okay, that's enough. Thank you for letting me talk to you about them. The Multiple Sclerosis International Federation, MSIF. If you haven't been on their website before, I really encourage you to jump on and have a look. This is a group of 49 MS organisations from around the world that have joined together to support lots of things about living with MS, about advocating for people with MS. Sorry, I'm getting messages on my phone. About all sorts of things to encourage, empower and assist people with MS and little organisations for people with MS around the world. Their mission statement: to bring the world together to improve the quality of life of everybody affected by MS and to end MS forever. It's pretty good. I like it. I think we'd all say, good job, go for it. The quality of life principles. They were recently refreshed. So they had formed some quality of life principles a few years ago, and then they refreshed them in 2017, and I was thrilled to be a part of that process. So they contacted lots and lots of people from about 30 countries. There you go, extensive consultation. People in 30 countries, people with MS, carers, partners of people with MS, all sorts of health professionals that work with people with MS, lots of different people, MS organisations, clearly, staff members, you know, health professionals. And they interviewed them and did really thorough consultation to say, you know, we really want to address this quality of life thing from lots of different angles and get it right. And as you know, or you may not, quality of life really is just summed up by an individual's level of health and happiness. But it's just never that simple, because what contributes to health and happiness? And there are a multitude of factors. So they've done this pretty little circle, which I actually think is pretty good. You know, sometimes, but this is pretty good. 3 different colours. And the bit that I'm most interested in as a psychologist is the bit that's kind of, I guess, teal or green coloured. And the overriding banner for that is about me. It's about the individual, the person with MS. And it talks, can everybody see it? I don't want to be too boring and say everything that's on the slide, but you can see the basics: age, gender, the ones that I love, attitudes and beliefs, mental health. And physical health is pretty important as well, but I really love to focus on the mental health side. And then in the orange we can see my immediate circumstances. And these things have massive impact on quality of life, of course. Things like relationships, work, volunteering, education and training. Leisure and social life, home and local community, and of course finances and resources. And then down the bottom in the dark blue, we look at my wider environment. And so we don't want to stop and think quality of life is just about the individual, and we don't want to just extend it to the individual and who they live with and who they speak to, but also about the wider community, because we can do so much in the community that does have enormous impact on people with MS. And you only have to be with somebody who's having difficulties with mobility to understand that that cafe is actually not going to be suitable because it has steps. You know, there are so many issues to overcome, but it's really important for us to be addressing them as well to increase quality of life for people with MS and other people in our society. So why is it so important to have these principles around quality of life? And the MSIF say we need to identify the main areas in which every bit of progress can make a real difference to individuals. And when I was reading through these principles, I just loved their use of language. They talk about every bit of progress, which is just a nicer way of saying it. It really engages the readers. I'm hoping it will engage you. Because we can say, well, what will having the quality of life principles do for people with MS? Like, it's all very nice to hear about these theories and the models, but you know, if you're living with MS and those theories and models and principles are on the internet, what does it have to do with us really on a day-to-day basis? And really the MSIF are saying we wanted to create these to inspire and challenge us all. And it's not just about inspiring and challenging the researchers to do better jobs, and it's not just about inspiring and challenging the MS nurses or the neurologists or the allied health professionals to afford us a better quality of life. It's actually about inspiring and challenging people with MS ourselves to do something about quality of life now and to ensure resilience into the future. Here are the 7 principles. The first one is the one that I love. You know, I wrote a little blog piece, which I think is actually in the bags that you were given, which you do not have to read now, but maybe with a cup of tea. And I query in there, are you actually allowed to have a favourite quality of life principle? You know, it seems a little bit odd, but I certainly do, and it's the one at the top. Empowerment, independence, and a central role for people affected by MS in decisions that affect their lives. Of course, that's a quality of life principle. It's a really important one. I am actually not going to read through all of them. I hope that's okay with everyone. You have them in your handout. But I don't want to just go through it for going through its sake. Please come and talk to me about them later if you'd like to, but I want to concentrate on number 1. And I'm aware of time already. That's number 1. We just read it out. So if you go onto the internet and you have a look at their page around this, you'll see that they have a really great summary and a great explanation for each of the 7 principles. And there are a multitude of dot points. And one of them is the one that I chose to take out under this one principle. Personal well-being, including diet, exercise and sleep, and resilience building are to be directed by the person affected by MS. So it clearly says, why don't we have a look at the modifiable lifestyle factors and somebody's psychological approach when we look at resilience and how this can help everybody with MS. So the MSIF call you to think about your own quality of life and then act to enhance it. And it's a game changer. I think it's a game changer. Because Remember the days? Some of you might have been in these days where your neurologist might have mentioned the term quality of life, and they might have a look at how far you can walk down the corridor, and they might pretty much have a little bit of a summary of where your quality of life might be based on how far you can walk down that corridor at that particular time. And luckily now we really know that quality of life is so much more than that. And it has always been much more than that, but now we're hearing about it, and now we're getting the words to inform and educate and challenge all of us. So today, the strategies that I want to go through are around the psychological wellbeing and resilience building tasks that we can employ. They need to be directed by the person with MS. Of course they do. And I say, yay, that's fantastic. That's so obvious. But hang on a second. What does resilience building mean? And if anybody here is the parent of children in primary school, I get sent home newsletters. Actually, it's all online now. There aren't even newsletters. You just log in. That's okay. And you're told we have resilience building programs, and your children are enrolled in something that will make them bounce back from difficult challenges. And I think, yay, we should all be more resilient. Hang on a second. What does resilience mean? And in fact, if I say to somebody, I think you should really build your resilience, that person will say, yeah, I really need to be more resilient. Great. And no, like, I'd love for somebody to tell me, what does that mean? Like, what do you go home and do to make sure that you're more resilient? And so that's why I'm here. Let's have a look. So I'm going to start a little bit further afield again on this topic, which is about a changing psychological approach. How do we work with clients as psychologists? How do we work with clients in order to equip them with just the knowledge about resilience, let alone the motivation to try and engage in the tasks that can build it? What kind of psychologist would I be if I didn't show you a picture of Freud? Look at him. I'm not a huge fan, but anyway, you guys still got to show a photo. Freud once wrote in a letter to a colleague, as a psychologist or a psychoanalyst, my job is to turn your hysterical misery into mundane unhappiness. Now, I can tell you, I think that if I was aspiring to that, I would have a pretty sad little life if I really wanted to assist people to go from rock bottom to just vaguely surviving, you know. I hope you can tell that that's not me. Luckily, we have other psychologists that have come since the time of Freud, and Martin Seligman is one, and you may have heard of him. He's fairly in the spotlight at the moment. He's actually just at Geelong Grammar recently, and I was lucky enough to hear him speak, but he's a really prominent psychologist because he's considered the father of positive psychology, which is it's a terrible name. It sounds like smiley face emoticons and looking for silver linings, and it's not. It's about strengths-based approach. And he says, why are we just looking to diagnose people and to examine all of their challenges if we are not at the same time looking to embrace their strengths and really rise them up? One of the things that Martin Seligman says, again, in the last couple of decades, the most influential thing that we've discovered in psychology is that human beings can change the way they think. And this sounds so simple, but you would have many experiences in your life where your self-talk reiterates this idea that, well, this is the way that I am, and I can't do that, or that. You know, lots of people will refer to themselves as pessimists or optimists. Well, I'm the glass half empty kind of guy. Oh, are you? If you want to be the glass half full kind of guy, you can actually change the way you think. Now, saying that, I need to make sure that you understand it's very difficult. It can be very difficult. It's a lot of practice, but it can be done if you have the right tools. So a drop down from this idea of let's not just focus on the challenges, but let's also focus on the positives or the strengths, is exemplified by a woman researcher in the US. Her name is Lyubomirsky. I always trip up on that. And she was a psychology graduate doing a thesis, and of course all of the lecturers channel her towards do some more research on depression. And she got to the point where she said, you know what, I would like to study happiness. And psychologists collectively said, oh, why would you study happiness? You know, we're all about depression. She said, well, I want to study happiness. And she's spent decades studying happiness. And one of the most wonderful things that she has discovered and has since been replicated in a bit of research has been where we find our happiness, in terms of where does it come, what makes a happy person. And this little pie chart says about 50% of your happiness, your ability to show happiness, to be happy, is genetics. So if you've got happy parents, if you have happy relatives, maybe you're more likely to be a happy kind of person. But it's only about 50%. The most surprising thing that she tells us is that 10% of your happiness comes from things that most of us would say make up 80% of our happiness. And they are the big things. How much money you have. What does your house look like? What's your job description? Are you in a relationship? Are you well educated? Do you have children? Etc, etc. And there's some really fantastic studies that look at how quickly people go back to baseline after they've won Tats Lotto. And in fact, a very interesting study that compared people that had won Tats Lotto with people that had suffered paraplegia in car accidents, and the levels of happiness going up or going down, but the return to baseline happened at around the same time. Because the big things, the big circumstances in our lives do impact on our happiness, but not really as much as we think. 40% is the thing we need to attend to. Because this is where she says, you know what, 40% of your ability to be happy is around your internal state of mind. And we have control over that because we now know that we can change the way we think. And if you change the way you think to really find the positive, the happy, the strengths, then it can be a game changer. Not easy. I want to keep saying that it's not easy, but it can work. If you are somebody that enjoys TED Talks, I would recommend this guy, Sean Aker. If you, in fact, enjoy TED Talks, you might have already seen it because he's only had 13 million views. It's just a really entertaining presentation that will suck you right in, and it's a nice one to listen to. He says it's not necessarily the reality that shapes us, but it's the lens through which your brain views the world that shapes your reality. And if we can change that lens, then of course we can change your happiness. So if we look at studies of positive psychology, there was a great big meta-analysis done in 2009, where some researchers brought together 51 studies. So there were about 4,000 participants involved across these studies over a couple of decades. It wasn't one big study, it was a meta-analysis, lots of studies put together. And they examined studies where clinicians had equipped people with positive psychology interventions, increased psychological resources, increased resilience, and they assessed the outcomes, what happened. And they saw that across all of these studies, there were significant increases in levels of well-being. And there was a decrease in depressive symptoms. And this is not through antidepressants. And this is not through a change in life circumstance. This is through resilience building. So once again, I hear you say, but yes, how do we build that resilience? It might work, but how do we do it? Stress management is really boring, and half of you just fell asleep when I said it. Because we all know we should manage stress better, and see there's more people falling asleep. But there's quick and easy ways to tap into stress management, so I want to go through one today. Goal setting, so important. This sense of achieving, this sense of accomplishment, and it could be, some people come and they say, Sally, I want to work with you and I want to reach a goal, and my goal might be to climb a mountain. Nobody comes to talk to, they know I'm not that sporty. I say, yeah. But that might be this big goal. I'm working with a woman at the moment who has hit rock bottom. She has told me that she's having a meltdown and a breakdown, and she looks like she's having a breakdown. She's in a whole world of pain, and I talked to her about the importance of goal setting because she was not in a great place. And so I give people sometimes 3 columns with just a heading at the top, and they need to talk to me about 3 different goals so that they can tick 3 things off every day that they're going to do. And I asked her to tell me, what can you do every day that we are going to put at the top? And I thought she would say, okay, I'll walk around the block, I'll eat 3 meals, I'll do something else, I'll contact a friend, have some social support. That's where I'd naively thought She said to me, well, I guess I could try and drink 3 cups of water a day. I said, that sounds like a good place to start. And I guess maybe I could try and have a shower every day. That sounds like a good place to start too. I don't want to put a 3rd one, she said, because I don't want to fail. I really just want to succeed. Great idea. And I was saying, yes, well, I was going to suggest that's a great idea. And she came back and she ticked every box. And she had this newfound level of, I can do something, I can build on this. Goal setting is so important. Self-talk. Are you the guy that gets up or the girl that gets up like me some mornings and says, how am I going to get through today? I don't even know how I'm going to do this. I'm not going to be able to. How am I going to cope? I'm not coping today. This is not okay. I'm not going to be all right. Good idea to check that self-talk and see what are you talking yourself into each morning when you wake up. And it's actually just a very interesting opportunity. Every morning, just taking the moment to say, what am I saying to myself about this day coming up? Because a lot of us will say, oh, this day is going to be awful. That's not helpful. We have to recognise that. Learned optimism is another way of increasing resilience. I need to hurry up. Problem-focused coping, and the ones in orange are the ones I'm going to elaborate on. Nurturing meaningful relationships, and relationships with people that care about you, not just people you care about. See the difference? There's a bit of a difference. Identifying the ones that actually care about you and nurturing those relationships. Strengths identification and development. What are your strengths? So many people cannot even tell me one. They have spent 0 time thinking about their strengths. There's a whole other presentation in that. Mindfulness. Practicing gratitude and kindness. And I did that because it was the throwback to the 90s PowerPoint presentations. I felt like I had to do one that bounced in. Sense of identity and meaning is just, who are you? Do you know? And what brings you meaning? What brings you joy? Okay, here's a stress management quiz. In an attempt to manage stress, do nurses in the UK, this study was done about 5 years ago, do nurses in the UK, A, increase exercise, meditation or relaxation? B, talk to managers about stresses at work? C, drink more wine? D, seek out counselling? Or E, increase social contact with supportive friends? What do you think? Yell some out. You cynical bunch. And you know me too well. This nurse says, I've learned to use meditation and relaxation to handle stress. Just kidding, I'm on my 3rd glass of wine. That was the result. Nurses in the UK. Now, I don't want you to instantly think of the nurses in the room if there are MS nurses around. But you can bet that when I presented this to a group of MS nurses, they were like, yeah, that's us, yeah. No, it didn't come from me. So we all use interesting stress management techniques. It might be wine for you, it might be Netflix, it might be sleep. It might be, I'd rather just be asleep, Sally. But we need to focus on some good stress management techniques. So here's your first homework sheet. Now, we do not have an appointment booked for next week, so I'm not going to actually know if you've done your homework, but I would encourage you to do it when you get home with a cup of tea. It's in your little bag that they gave you. Number 1 question, what are your daily hassles? Just name it, getting it out of here. There's so much noise going on up here, I can hear it all. The noise, there's so many little stresses. We need to write them down sometimes. What are your daily hassles? I'll tell you what mine is. Why do they want dinner every night? Really? And mine are now, you've seen them, 9 and 7, they're catching on. If I serve them spaghetti bolognese one night and then pasta bake the next night, they know what I've done. They know I've just recycled that. Other little daily hassles, time management. You know, a daily hassle that kind of goes into 2 regions is getting out of bed in the morning and thinking, can I feel my foot? How's the pain in my hands? Have I got the MS hug today? You know, they're not just daily hassles, but boy, they contribute to that kind of daily load that you carry around with you. What are the sources of chronic stress in your life? So that's question number 2 on your homework sheet. What are the chronic sources of stress? It's It's unusual for me to work with someone who has MS that won't admit that having a chronic disease is a chronic source of stress. And it's linked to this largely, the uncertainty. I've got MS, it's okay today, 10 years, I don't want to think about it. That kind of, I don't know what it's going to look like. Everyone tells me the medication's so much better, blah, blah, blah. Fingers crossed. You know, it's a level of uncertainty, and with uncertainty comes stress, and it generally comes in the form of chronic stress. So name it. And then what do you do with this stuff? You have a look at the list that you've done for your homework sheet diligently after this session, and you say, which of these dot points can I control? And which ones are just out of my control? And just even making cross off the one, tick them, cross them, whatever you want to do, and just acknowledge which ones can I control. So for example, going back to me, I like to bring it back to me, of course, Tuesday night is now chicken schnitzel night. Those of you who have prepared meals will understand that that is a bit of a game changer for me, because it means that I don't think about it. And not thinking about what to cook for dinner on Tuesday nights is all the good things. Little bits of control can reduce the stress. I'm just not going to worry about it is not a stress management technique. We all use it from time to time, but it's not a good one, not particularly helpful in the research. Establish routines. I realise how close I am to being running out of time, so I'm not going to elaborate. Exercise. If I could give it to you in a pill, if I could prescribe it, you would all take it. You would, because you'd say, gee, that prescription's going to fix so much stuff in my life. It's so good for me. Notice your self-talk. Practice relaxation, not just escapism, so we'll get to that. What are your daily joys, and what are the big things that you're looking forward to? So I'll give you some examples of daily joys so that you know where I'm headed, so you can do your homework efficiently and effectively. But also the big things you're looking forward to. You might be going to Fiji next month, and that's fine. I'm not, so don't tell me about your trip to Fiji. Here we go. The little things that I'm looking forward to. Of course, my children give me a lot of joy, but if they're annoying me or if they're not present, I really enjoy this. It's one good cup of coffee every day. It costs $4. Oh, mine looks more like that. It costs $4. I pay for it every day. I only have one. And if I drink it so fast because I'm so busy and I've got so much to do, and then I pick it up, it's empty, and I think, why did I spend $4 on a moment to enjoy, and then I just completely forgot to enjoy it? Which, because you're all experts in mindfulness and you put your hands up before, you know what I'm doing. So you all enjoy your coffees. I know you do, because that's why you bought them, unless you're completely addicted like some of the staff members who I've talked to before. I love my electric blanket. I love going to bed. I'm not depressed. Self-evaluation. I'm not. I just love going to bed and having a warm, it's a moment, you know. And the fact that they call it electronic blanket, I couldn't resist. This is my puppy dog, Rosie. She's beautiful. She's a year old. She's a Kelpie, but her ears just haven't yet, so we think they probably won't, but she's very cute. These are my jammies. Don't forget, I love going to bed. I do not sound like Adele. I don't, but I pretend. And particularly when I'm by myself, my children don't tolerate me singing in the car as loudly anymore, which is a shame. But when they're not there, I bang it out. And I love it. Earl Grey cup of tea in the afternoon, about 3:30. That's to demonstrate how old I am now, at the age of 42, that I love my cup of tea in the afternoon. This is also to demonstrate how old I am, because this is a sunrise. And when I said to someone, there is nothing like sunrise, that's the best time of the day, I thought, oh my gosh, is my grandfather standing behind me, who turned 100 on the weekend, by the way, but thought, oh, I've officially become old when I love sunrise. But don't think I'm that good, because I also love Netflix and just sitting on the couch. So I'd love for you to dot point, and that's how simple it is. Sometimes people stumble on that. What are your daily joys? I don't know. I guess I, like seeing my friends. And that's as far as they go, because they don't spend any time thinking about it in real terms. So name them all. And then if you name, sunrise is not a great example. If you name a coffee, next time you have coffee, after you've written that down, next time you have a coffee, you will probably be more likely to enjoy it, because you've brought it forward a little. Okay. Okay, I'm going to talk very briefly about mindfulness and then I'll get off because I'm sure you need me to wrap up. Mindfulness for me came into my consciousness in about 2012 when there was an earthquake in Melbourne. Now, this earthquake affected the eastern suburbs, which it never does. It was very minor. In fact, this was the meme that came out on Facebook. That was as substantial as it was. It still makes me laugh. But, you know, I experienced this earthquake, which I never got to do growing up. And I thought, oh my gosh, that's a giant possum on my roof, because I heard this big loud noise going down the roof, and then the couch was moving and I'm on a concrete slab. So, you know, I thought, oh, this could be an earthquake. So I jump up and I run up to grab my children, who were 4 and 2 at the time, and I was going to pull them out of their cots, or bed and cot, and I don't know, throw them in the bath. I wasn't exactly sure what to do, but I thought that maybe, you know, I should do something like that to keep them safe. And the earthquake stopped and that was it. And I thought, oh. So I went back to the couch and I sat down, I got my iPad and I went onto Facebook. And I just kept refreshing until somebody said something. And then I was like, yeah, me too, I just felt that too. And then I didn't think anything more of it. And then I got The Age on the weekend, you know, 3 or 4 days later, and I was flicking through The Age and I found this article, Night the Net Went Wild, or How We No Longer Live in the Moment. And I'm not checking Facebook at the moment, I'm just bringing up a slide here that I can read from. This author said, I didn't realise the extent to which social media had seeped into my consciousness until last month's, must have been the month later, mild earthquake in Victoria. The waves were still buffeting my fish tank when I rushed to Facebook, only to find someone had beaten me to it, calling the quake on Twitter about 40 seconds earlier. And for that to happen, the person was probably punching the keys on his or her iPhone before uploading it to their social media. And I thought, oh, wow, I'm just not in the moment at all. I'm just waiting to see somebody else's experience of the moment rather than just being in the moment. It also occurred to me when I saw the Olympics in the same year. And I've already mentioned I'm not sporty, that's getting embarrassing now, but I'm not sporty. But I love to watch the Olympics because of the opening ceremony, and you see all of the athletes come in and they have worked their entire lives for this moment, walking in, and they're on the television. And what did we see? This ginormous ad for Apple and Samsung. And these athletes who know, by the way, that this moment is going to hit their eulogy. I don't know what's going to be my eulogy. These people do. And they wanted to tape the moment, the biggest moment of their life, they wanted to tape so that they could watch it, a moment that they never experienced at home later on. Maybe Channel 9 would get better footage. I just thought maybe they should know that. But they decided to watch it through a little screen. And I thought, maybe we're missing the point here somewhere. So mindfulness is about being present in every moment. It's not about yoga, it's not about meditation, it's about being here in this moment and experiencing it. So being mindful is increasing your awareness of your own thoughts. Where are they? Are they here? Are they somewhere else? Mine are frequently, did I leave that load of washing in the washing machine? It's not an easy thing. It's about mental training, and it's about recognising the emphasis on simultaneous tasks and agendas. Like sometimes I'm reading readers with my children and I think if I actually just got the chicken out of the freezer, it would be defrosted by now. And then I think, stop it. You're listening to a book that you've read 15,000 times, but she loves reading it and we're going to be in the moment. It's practicing and it's difficult, but it's good. So now a last question. Who in this photo is in the moment? Isn't she fabulous? The one in the black cardigan. This is in New York, I believe, where George Clooney was making an appearance. And you can see her, she's like, I'm right with you, George. Isn't she? I want to tell the others that I believe there are photos of George on a thing called Google that they could probably get later in the day, but they might just want to put their phones down and experience the wonder of George Clooney. Anyway, I think I'm going to leave it there because we're running out of time, and I'll see if I can squish the other stuff into this afternoon's presentation. So thank you very much.
Thank you so much for that, Sally. Really amazing talk. I think you wrote my daily joy journal there. I can beat out a very good song when I'm in the car as well, especially after I've dropped my little one off to childcare. So thank you. So we're just going to take a very, very short break. Okay, so I'll welcome Sally now, and she'll be speaking to us for the next half an hour. Thank you.
Okay, now we need to be confident that we're not going to fall asleep. So stay with me, because you have eaten and you have had a little boogie, I hope, and now you just want to have a little nap. And so I'm going to try and keep you with me while we discuss a few more strategies and a couple of other little funny things towards the end, I hope. Where am I? Okay. So I wanted to talk briefly about active relaxation training, and I wanted to really separate this from escapism. So when we look at, we're asking people, what do you do to relax? A lot of people will say to me, well, you know, after the kids are in bed and I've finished my work for the day and the dishes are done, I'll sit down and I'll watch some television. And I think that is fantastic, and it's important to have some escape time, to escape to a different place, to read a fabulous book, which is very important, reading is wonderful, or to get involved in a different story, to watch television, to be swept away in another world. Really important. It's not the same as actively relaxing. And so today I want to tell you a little bit about what that means. Learning how to relax and be able to take a moment to strengthen the connection between your mind and your body is super important and of great benefit. And it's also really, really difficult to do. One of the main reasons it's difficult is because nobody has enough time to do it. Because essentially what I'd like you to do is practice the art of sitting in a chair and thinking about nothing. Now, most people say, oh, that sounds interesting, but I'm actually quite busy, so I can't just sit in a chair and think of nothing. So lots of very clever people have developed apps that you can download onto your phone that allow you to feel like you're doing something while actually doing nothing at all. And one of the best of these apps, I think there are many, many, and there are lots of good ones, is called Smiling Mind. This is also in your bag, I think. There's a little exercise sheet. And I would love you to download this one to give it a go. It's free, developed by Australian psychologists. They actually developed it for adolescents and had such great success with it that they've created an adult version in the app as well. And it's a cheating way of actively relaxing, because instead of sitting there in a chair trying to think of nothing, which is very difficult, you have the little man in your ears saying, now I want you to bring your thoughts back and think about nothing. And it's easier to think about nothing when you're concentrating on somebody telling you to think about nothing. My husband, who of course never listens to a word I say because he says, I know what you're doing, don't you bring psychology home and try and... I said to him once, I think you should try this app. It's really good. And lots of people are telling me it's fantastic and I use it and I think you could benefit. And he was like, oh, well, I'm not going to do anything you say. But I made him do it. And then he came back out of the room that he was listening to it in pretty promptly and said, no, don't like it. I said, what do you mean you don't like it? He said, well, firstly, the guy sounds, to be honest, he sounds wealthy. He sounds good looking. And I'm not going to listen to him tell me how to relax.
He sounds good looking.
Yeah, he sounds good looking. He doesn't want a bar of that. So I was telling this story to a group of people in Geelong in Victoria, and somebody put their hand up. And I thought, that's an interesting time to put your hand up. And I said, yes. And she said, I just wanted to let people know that I actually live on the same street as that man and he is very good looking. Fabulous. Now, that is a reason that I know most of you are going to go home and try that one to see if you think he is good looking. Give it a go. Now, I want to reiterate, as you know, these things are hard for me as well. So something like Smiling Mind is really fantastic. If you do it every day, it takes 10 minutes. It will provide you over time, maybe about 21 days, with an increased level of calm, with an increased sense of, I feel under maybe a little bit less pressure now. Sometimes I use it every day. Sometimes it drops off my radar too, because that's what happens with us all. One day, I was in my office and a client had cancelled, and I was feeling a bit just overwhelmed by lots of things I had to do. So I thought to myself, you know what, I should get back into Smiling Mind because I need it right now, which demonstrates I should have been doing it weeks before. But I thought I'll pop it on and I'll get back into it. So I am not joking. I was sitting at my desk and put it on, sit back, have a big breath, and I'm listening to the man with the introduction, and without thinking about it at all, I looked down and I tried to fast forward it to get to the end because I didn't have time to do it, and I just wanted to. It's really very hard to stop, but it's a really great thing to learn how to do, and I would really encourage you all to give it a go. This woman, I don't know if you can read it, she's doing the meditative pose and she's saying, oh, I'd really rather be watching TV. And it's true, it's so much easier to watch TV than it is to think of nothing. So I challenge you to do it. This was all meant to be the bite before the break, by the way. So this is just tapping back into remembering the quality of life principles and saying, and how they encourage us to act as people with MS ourselves, like find every little bit of benefit you can suck out of life and put it in and do the work. Oh, that was the break. Okay. Sense of identity and meaning. So we'll just touch on that in 3.5 minutes, shall we? Because that's easy to cover. It's really important for us all. And remember, I'm talking to every human in the room, not just people with MS. It's really important for us to have a bit of a sense of who we are. And part of what might make that identity up for you might be something that's captured by this little cartoon or this little picture. A pessimist complains about the wind. The optimist expects it to change. And the realist adjusts the sails. I love it. I'm a huge fan of promoting realistic optimism. You know, that let's not pretend that things aren't happening. Let's not pretend that MS is fine. Let's not pretend that, you know, everyone does. Everyone's got their own shit they're dealing with, and we all know that. But let's manage things, and let's be proactive, and let's adjust the sails. You know, if it's not working, then find a way and seek support and develop strategies. And don't just say to yourself, I need to be more resilient, when nobody knows what resilience means. Figure out what resilience means to you and plan around it. How much would I love my children to grow up with the idea that no matter what happens, they will be okay? How much would we all love to have that as truly a part of us? Whatever happens, it'll be all right. I'll find a way. That would be just wonderful. Stephen Covey said, people can't live with change if there's not a changeless core inside them. And I truly believe that. If you know who you are, if you know where your strengths are, if you know what brings you meaning, if you know what brings you joy, if you know your values, insert all the other terms here, if you know it all, things can change. You'll be okay, you adapt. But if you don't know who you are on the inside, the external changes and we're all lost. It's all very difficult. Gratitude. So put your hand up if you write down 3 or 4 points or more every night about what you're grateful for or happy about or what brought you joy. Nice. Couple of people, well done. Has it been a good thing to do? You've got to say yes because you do it every day, so you'd be crazy if you weren't. This can be really a bit of a game changer too. And I think because just based on the people that I work with, a lot of people will look at me like, oh my gosh, I'm paying you money to tell me to go home and write 3 fun things down every night. I can't believe I've come to see you. But I've got to build a rapport first, obviously, so they trust me to try these things. And if they try these things, I'm yet to find somebody that says, no, it made no impact at all in the way I view the world. Because it will. It will change you just a little bit. And it's worth giving a go. You know, none of these things are going to do harm. So why not give them a go? And see, after 2 or 3 weeks, you might start seeing some differences. So we know it's fundamental in religion. We know from, you know, through the ages that a whole heap of religion is about what are you grateful for? What are you happy about? How were you blessed today? However you want to phrase it. It changes. Sometimes I encourage people to do it before you go to sleep at night, and I'll tell you what I would encourage you to do, and there's a handout in your homework pack. But it's about just before you go to sleep, maybe talking to yourself about what was good about the day rather than what's stressing you out about tomorrow. And that can be quite powerful too. And the example that I give about the gratitude journal is I did this for a couple of weeks, maybe 2 or 3 weeks, and thought, I don't know if I'm going to promote this one widely, because I was writing down, like my trip to work was all right and there was not much traffic and these are good things during the day. I had a nice lunch, had a good conversation with someone. That's okay. And then one day I worked with a person who was acutely suicidal, and I don't work with people like that very often. She came into my office, she told me exactly how she was going to kill herself. It was going to be that afternoon. She had planned everything to the point where she knew her children were not going to find her body. So it was a fairly intense day for me, and she is very well now, by the way. I had to explain to her at the end of the session, we will keep you here, we'll get your husband down, we'll figure out what to do next, and we had to find her appropriate care. They reviewed her medication, which was out of control, and she is much better. When I went home that night, I picked up all my kids, I was feeding them spaghetti bolognese, and my little girl, Eloise, had never, ever eaten broccoli, ever. She was 2. My son, Hamish, was 4. He had always eaten broccoli. So until Eloise was born, I thought, I'm such a good mother because he eats everything and that's because of me. And then she was born, she ate nothing. And I was like, it's all about the genetics and it's nothing to do with nurture. It's all about nature. Anyway, this day, when my head was really somewhere else while I was trying to feed these children, she decided to pick up the broccoli, which was on top of the spaghetti bolognese, because she saw Hamish ate it first. She looked at it, she put it in her mouth, and she chewed and chewed and chewed. And I thought, oh my gosh, this is the first time she's ever eaten broccoli. She used to scream, by the way, about having to have it removed from her plate before she would eat anything else. Like, it was crazy, out of control, and I would fall for it every time. This time she decided to eat it. Wow. But she didn't swallow it. She spat it out, and she threw it at Hamish. And then she turned to me and she was like, and she looked like, I've been plotting that for 2 years. She thought it was the funniest thing ever. And then, of course, because I'm such a good mother, I burst into laughter. So we're both laughing. Hamish is a good sport, so he's just picking it out of his hair and he's trying to find something to throw back, which of course gets shut down. I put them to bed and I'm back on the phone to the GP trying to find a place for this lady that needs acute psychiatric care. And then I get into bed. Honestly, I don't remember where my husband was in this memory, so I don't know where he was, but I was in bed by myself and I picked up my gratitude journal and I thought, oh, what am I meant to be grateful for today? Well, maybe I stopped somebody from killing themselves for like the next 6 hours. Like, am I meant to be grateful for this experience? Because nothing about this day has been enjoyable for me. And then I remembered the broccoli, and it was the first time in completing the gratitude journal that I actually was in bed by myself and I laughed out loud. And I thought, oh, look at that. I'm having a beneficial physiological response to one story, but I'm having 2 benefits. When it happened, I laughed. When I actively remembered it on purpose and wrote it down, I laughed again. Laughter's good for us. You might have heard a little saying, good medicine, that laughter. It's good for us. If you can summon those good experiences before you go to sleep, isn't it a much better thing for me to think about before I go to sleep than the little control, or in fact 0 control I had over whether that lady was going to be all right that night? Much better for me to be thinking about the evil ways of my daughter and her sense of humour. Do you get it? Give it a go. You know, sometimes I speak to audiences and I make them email me on Monday their first 3 dot points. So be good. Stay awake. If you stay awake, I won't make you do that. Communication and coping strategies. I talk to people a lot about strategic communication. And I talk to people with MS about how difficult it is to communicate their invisible symptoms, and they're not so invisible ones, but mostly the invisible ones, to the people they love most in the world. I'm sorry about all my P's that keep popping. And I worked with this great guy who had decided with his wife that now that he had MS that was giving him significant fatigue, they were going to role swap, because at the time he was working full-time, she was raising 4 children under 11. So they decided that he would do that role, she would go to work full-time, so that he could better manage fatigue. That was okay. He's learnt a lot and it's all right. And he was doing a great job, and he was coming to terms with a whole lot of change in his life, as was she, I'm sure. And his way of dealing with MS and the changes in his life were, Sal, in this first session, Sal, I'm not going to let it control me. No, I'm going to beat it. So watch out, here we come. And he wanted to put that vibe out to his wife and his family because he didn't want the MS to be seen to be affecting him. So his job was also to pay the bills and do the family kind of finances and admin. And he had an increased level of fatigue one day and it was really bad, and he thought, oh man, I hope this isn't a relapse. And the next day it was a bit better, next day it was a bit worse, then it was a bit worse again, then it was slightly better, bit worse, bit worse, bit worse. He covered up really well, decided not to let his wife in on this. And then about 2 weeks later, when he was really in the midst of some pretty awful fatigue, he was dropping the kids off and then sleeping until school pickup and pretending everything was fine. His wife showed him like a red electricity bill, as in the colour red, not the company, and said, hey, you didn't pay the electricity bill, so if it's too much for you, just let me know and I'll do it. But otherwise, what's the deal? You've got to pay the electricity bill. And he lost it. You have no idea what it's like to live with MS. You have no idea. The fatigue is out of control and I can barely remember the bills, and you just get to go to work and I've got 4 kids. And she said, yeah, because you never tell me what's going on in there. I have no idea. So please let me in and please tell me what's going on. And he was suddenly struck with the idea of, oh, am I actually meant to communicate a few things about my MS? Because I was just hoping she'd read my mind, which obviously doesn't happen. So I talk to people about developing effective communication strategies with their partner or with anybody in your life that's important to you. I ruined my own gag, but yeah. I think everybody's on the continuum somewhere. I meet some people with MS and it's all about them. Oh my gosh, it's all about them. Nobody else in the world is allowed to be tired because they don't have MS fatigue. I have MS fatigue, so other people don't know what it's like to be tired. It's not helpful for other people around you. I also meet people who come into my room dragging a foot and furniture surfing and refuse to acknowledge that there's an issue. So we're all somewhere on the communication continuum of being able to express to people that we love where our symptoms are, particularly the invisible ones. And it's really important that we aim for effective rather than comfortable. It's much more comfortable to not say anything or much more comfortable to whinge all day, every day. But that doesn't mean that either of those things are effective. If you refuse to complain about it, if you don't want your partner to worry, if you don't want your partner or the people that you love to have this label of MS on your forehead, you just want to just say, nah, I was diagnosed a year ago, let's move on, I'll just suffer in silence. What you may be doing is, at the bottom of that one, you're foregoing honesty in the relationship. Because remember, I don't know if I said this before, if you have MS in your body, really what's happening is you've got MS in the relationship. It just happens to be in your physical body. But it is going to impact the person that you love the most just as much. But they don't have it in their body to know what's going on, and it's your job to educate them about it, even if it's uncomfortable. And you've got to work at it together to figure out, how much do you want to know? How much do I need to tell you? How much do I want you to tell me? And how much, we've got to have a respectful relationship where this information is shared properly. It's often the case that both people in the relationship need to move a little bit out of your comfort zone and a little bit more towards the effective communication style. I don't like telling John new symptoms. I don't think anybody does. I give it the appropriate level of denial. So it's a couple of days thinking it's probably something else. I've probably pinched a nerve. You just can't quite admit that might be a new MS symptom. And then every now and then I'll say to him, so I just want to let you know something. And he'll go, oh my God, and he'll sit down. What? And I'll say, well, I think I've just got some sensory stuff and it's probably nothing, but I just want to let you know, and it'll probably go away, but just to be open about it. His response is always, do we need to call the ambulance? Which floors me, because of the work that I do, you would think he would know that that's not why you call the ambulance, but he doesn't. Shall we call the neurologist? Do you have his number? Just call him and say, no, we don't need to call the neurologist. But if I didn't tell John at that point, and if I just let it go, then what would happen? The thing I'm thinking about is when I had pins and needles in the tip of my nose. Now that's where they stayed and then they went. So that was a pretty good little thing. That just was a blip. But it might have spread, it might have affected, I don't know what. It might have got big enough to be a problem, and he would have said, when did this start? And I would have said 3 weeks ago, and he would have said, why didn't you tell me? Why? And then he might have, I do a lot of, and then John would have thought this, and then I would have thought that. And maybe he wouldn't think any of it. But maybe he would have thought, why do I not support you properly? Why don't you want to tell me? What else are you hiding? It could be anything. Coping strategies. Oh, we're right on time. Okay. So this is a mouthful. Stay with me, no one's fallen asleep yet? I don't think, give them a nudge, because this is the funny bit. Problem-focused coping versus emotion-focused coping. You might have heard of these terms. You've certainly all used the coping strategies that I'm about to talk about in varying quantities. We want you to use a bit of both. Often we're trying to promote problem-focused coping. That's the, be-all and end-all, and it's really good. It's the preferred coping strategies. But you know what? Sometimes there's a place for emotion-focused coping as well, as long as they're helpful. And you're thinking, we don't even know what they are yet, so I'll tell you. Emotion-focused coping. These are things like talking about things. This is a coping strategy like that are often used really well and can be very beneficial in episodes of grief. Someone dies, and it's really good for us to talk about it. And it's good for us to talk about our relationship with them. It's good for us to talk about the way they died. It's good for us to talk about even seeing somebody's body after they died, the arrangements for the funeral. All of these things are important to get out, even though we're not trying to fix anything. It's just about talking about it. That's really important. It's an emotion-focused coping strategy. Another one is mindfulness. It's a really good thing to do. It's emotion-focused coping. We're not solving anything. There's not a problem that's going to be fixed other than probably a reduction in anxiety levels or depression levels and feeling calmer. But it's a great emotion-focused coping strategy, along with prayer, along with, I'm trying to think of other ones. They're really positive, proactive, emotion-focused coping strategies. There's also maladaptive emotion-focused coping strategies. These are things called drinking. These are things like drug taking. These are things like escapism. If you are finding, and we are finding this more and more, that maybe in particular men and younger men are leading, great lives at work, coming home and on the Xbox for 8 hours, there's escapism. There's, I just can't deal with thinking about other things, so I'm going to escape. And it might be drugs, alcohol, these types of things. They're maladaptive. They're not great coping strategies, and they come under the banner of emotion-focused. Then we have problem-focused coping strategies. Great. These are ones that are all about figuring out, so what is the problem and what's in my control to fix? What's in my control to manage? And often, I think people with MS fall into the trap of, well, I can't fix MS. There's no cure, so there's no problem-focused coping going on there. There's just, I'll just have to put up with it. And that's so not the case, because we know that MS can be broken down into so many different levels of stress and different levels of ability and need, that we can break most of that down to finding little problem-focused coping strategies that we can attach to them to make our situation better, which brings us right back to that sense of empowering ourselves to get across things and to make change for the better in our lives. The next slide, and you may be pleased to know that this is my last one, so I'm right on time. I'm very proud of myself. This last slide is a little video. And this little video, has anybody seen it? It's called It's Not About the Nail. Has anyone seen it? Oh, good. This little video shows, in a very light-hearted way, the difference between emotion-focused coping, which is just, I just want to talk about it, and problem-focused coping, sometimes when we want to help others fix things. And I would like to let you know that the characters in this video are very gender stereotypical, so sometimes we view men as being the ones that want to fix it and women as the ones that just want to talk about it. I'd like to let you know that men and women actually share equal quantities of these coping strategies, but in this video they have portrayed it this way. So I'm going to press play and see what you think. Oh, there's also some loud music at the end, so don't get a fright, but it will end with a bang.
It's just, there's all this pressure, you know? And sometimes it feels like it's right up on me, and I can just feel it, like literally feel it in my head, and it's relentless, and I don't know if it's gonna stop. I mean, that's the thing that scares me the most, is that I don't know if it's ever gonna stop.
Yeah. Well, you do have a nail in your head.
It is not about the nail.
Are you sure? Because, I mean, I'll bet if we got that out of there...
Stop trying to fix it.
No, I'm not trying to fix it. I'm just pointing out that maybe the nail is causing...
You always do this. You always try to fix things when what I really need is for you to just listen.
No, see, I don't think that is what you need. I think what you need is to get the nail
See, you're
out.
not even listening now.
Okay, fine. I will listen. Fine.
It's just... Sometimes it's like there's this achy... I don't know what it is. And I'm not sleeping very well at all. And all my sweaters are snagged. I mean, all of them.
Yeah, that sounds really hard.
It is. Thank you. Ow!
Oh, come on. Ow. If you would just...
Don't...
Try to see things my way. Do I have to keep on talking till I can go on? We can work it out. We can work it out.
Do you share my joy with that? It makes me laugh every time. I showed it to my husband and he thought I was like assessing him on something. He was like he was about to fall into a trap. What? Which one am I? He says. I'm like, no, you're missing the point. It's always a test for him. I think underneath the humour of that, I guess the point I want to make from that video is that we all need to demonstrate both, and we all need to do both roles in our support of other people. Sometimes we just need to listen, even if it is blatantly obvious. Just listening is really important sometimes. And for our own coping, sometimes it's really important to be able to figure out, can I do something about the nail? Because maybe just talking about how difficult it is not going to change it for me. Thank you so much for having me here today. Have a great afternoon.